Hey there, welcome back. It's part 9 of how to fix US soccer. Today, my friends, we're taking on a big topic. We're going to talk about pay to play. Now, before I get into what I've got written down in my notes around pay to play, let me tell you this. This is a big topic. There's a lot of moving parts to it. There's a lot of opinions on it. And I'm not nearly going to do enough justice in a 10 to 15 minute video about this one topic. So I highly encourage you to go down in the comments, share your thoughts at the end of the episode. Let me know what you thought. If there's something like a major section of this that I've missed, leave me a comment. I'll be glad to revisit it. Also, I'm not an expert. I'm just your average US soccer fan. So as you go through this, I'm not on Fox Sports talking about pay to play, right? I'm not in independent soccer media running a website. I'm not a journalist, right? I'm just a guy who wants US soccer to make the 2022 World Cup, to host the 2026 World Cup, and eventually someday win the World Cup. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about this critical thing called pay to play. That was, I don't know. Oh, money landed on my microphone screen. All right. So first off, let's define what pay to play is. It's pretty simple. Like, it is what it sounds like. It is paying to play, in our country, soccer. Okay, well, that's not a big deal, right? Like, my 4-year-old started soccer this fall, right? He's in the U5s. Local team, there's only 2 clubs in my city, right? 2 actual legitimate, like, you could do AYSO, which is essentially a bunch of parents running around, but 2 actual clubs. And we pay, I think it was like $50 or $55 for roughly 10 or 11 games and a t-shirt. Okay, and that gets you one season, like a fall season. Okay, so there's a winter session that they do that's like at an indoor facility. We would pay for that as well. There's a spring session. We would pay for that as well. There's a, right? So like you're paying for each season. Okay, it's like, well, that's only $50. That's not a big deal. And I'd argue at the low levels, at the youth level, I mean, that's not a lot, right? Like the t-shirts costing them probably, when you buy in bulk, $7 to $9. Okay, so, and then you got to rent the fields and all that kind of stuff. So like, okay, it's not a huge amount of money. But as you go up further in the US, especially obviously the youth like pyramid, as you get older and you get into better and better teams and you start getting into traveling squads and stuff like that, the cost can go up significantly. My same club that my son, we pay $50 a season. So let's say if we did a fall and a spring, we'd pay $110, right? And we'd get 2 t-shirts of the deal. Yippee, right? At the U16 level, the U14, U13, like the elite level of the club, because they have like you just want to play, and then there's like, we're really serious about this, is like $1,200 or $1,300 a year. Now it's a year, it's not per season, so like yay, but that's still $100 a month. That's a little more than $100 a month, right? If it's $1,300, that's a lot of money, and we're on the low end. Like, if you get into bigger cities, and especially, or like really legitimate teams, like elite travel squads, you could be talking like $4 or $5 grand a year. So, okay, well, why is that a problem? Because like they got to pay for stuff. Well, here's how this is part of the conversation around US soccer. Is it prices out kids with talent that could play soccer. And that makes sense, right? It can easily make soccer an elite sport, for the upper crust, or the folks with lots of spendable income that can afford to spend $1,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 a year to let their kid play a sport. And the theory being that there are kids out there that are, let's just define it, that are poor, that are less well off, or whose parents just simply don't want to spend that kind of money. And I don't really blame them to do that in a sport. I'm kind of the same way. If someone said, hey, it's going to cost you $5,000 a year to let your son play soccer, I'd be like, that's great. See you later. Like, I can't afford that. And even if I could, like, I'd have to have just a lot of money for me to be like, oh yeah, it's $5,000 is nothing. $5,000 is a lot to pretty much most Americans. So that is a major problem. And here's the worst part. For a lot of the clubs, it doesn't include travel. So like your travel costs go on top of like your club fee. Okay, so that's kind of giving you the idea of defining what pay to play is. Okay? And we've already kind of hit on like how much money are we talking, and it's not insignificant. It's a large amount of money. Why do teams do it? Why do they do it? Well, clubs for the most part are not nonprofits. That's my understanding. My local clubs are not nonprofits. They may even be structured. I think one of them actually may be structured as a nonprofit, but like nonprofits still make profit, right? That's how they exist. So they've got to pay for coaches. They've got to pay to have coaches with good badges, which we've talked about in another episode. I'm going to have that pop up here for you. Coaching badges are ludicrously expensive in the United States. That coach is going to want to get a return on their investment there. Well, that means they got to go to a club. Well, that club, if they want to hire the right kind of coaches, coach is going to say like, hey, I cost money to at least pay back the badge, right? So you have the cost of the coaches. You've got renting fields. In the United States, renting a soccer field is not cheap. You have to have insurance, or like the field has to have it. There's different ways you could do it, but like it's not just like there's a field out there and you can just go play on it, because like somebody's kid gets hurt, right? And they have to have ACL surgery. Somebody's getting sued. Well, that's where insurance kicks in. And sometimes it's state association or whatever can cover you, but then you're paying into the state association. So essentially the long story short is it costs money to run a club. And it's kind of like you're running a business. It makes sense. And if you want a good club, you want good coaches. Well, good coaches cost money, and you want nicer facilities or fields or practice facilities or whatever that looks like. All of that costs money. So that's okay. So like everything costs money. Okay, we have to offset that cost. Somebody's got to pay for it. That's the underlying problem. Because at the end of the day, I feel like pay to play is kind of an unfortunate byproduct of our current system. If you saw part 8 of this series, I talked about solidarity payments. If you have not seen that, pause the video. Like, I'm going to pause right now so that you can go do that. Go watch that video. I'll have it pop up there for you. You've probably already seen it by now. Go watch that video, because that ties in directly to this pay to play. Like, that's kind of like, to me, it's two sides of the same coin. And the coin is somebody has to pay for the coaches, the fields, the facilities, etc. Right? Like, somebody has to buy my son's team the cones and the soccer balls and the goals that are used at the county, park that we use. It's not the same level, but it's still like, that's why I pay $55 a season, right? Okay, great. With solidarity payments, you have a kid on your team and they get really good and they get sold on in the future, you get a percentage of that transfer revenue. So that person gets sold for $1 million to, Werder Bremen in the Bundesliga, or in are they in the Bundesliga or the Bundesliga 2? Whatever, right? Like Josh Sargent, who's on he got called up to the Portugal friendly, right? The U.S. men's national team Portugal friendly. He was in the U20 World Cup squad and the U17 World Cup squad. Okay, so he's signing with Werder Bremen. Well, if his club had the rights to him, if he gets sold from Werder Bremen to Liverpool at some point in the future for lots and lots of money, his home club would get a percentage. There'd be a 5% pool of the transfer fee, and then it gets split up based on like what club you were at on your birthday in each of your developmental years, essentially. So let's just say you had a kid that gets sold to a club and then they sell him for $1 million and there's a 5% pool. Okay, that's $50,000. Let's say that soccer player spent their entire youth career with one club. That club would all of a sudden get $50,000. That offsets a lot of pay-to-play fees. But we don't have that. Solidarity payments is not a thing in the United States. because MLS and USSF are like in the contracts it said, don't worry about it, like just give it to the MLS team. What? Like, that's crazy talk, because a lot of times, kids come up and they play in a youth team. They get maybe pulled into an MLS development academy if they're really good. The development academy sells them onto or not sells them, but they get promoted up to an MLS squad. The MLS squad sells them to Europe. The youth team doesn't get anything for that. So if we had solidarity payments, it's not that pay to play would go away, because it's like, that's a long, like, if you had a 12-year-old today, it might be 10 years before you get a solidarity payment on them, right? Like, or whatever it is, 15 years. It's a long period of time. But eventually, you alter the landscape to where, if you're really good at your job as a club in training players, not winning, because that's another thing that's wrong with U.S. soccer, is we're focused on winning at the youth levels versus like getting good. Who cares if you lose if you got really good to where you can get sold on, right? And actually have a career. So if you had a system set up that way, it would take a long time, but eventually those solidarity payments start coming in, and you say, hey, you know what? We can have some scholarships for some of those kids that can't afford to be at our club. Or, hey, this year, we're actually reducing our costs from $4,000 a year to $3,000 a year, which doesn't fix the problem immediately, right? But it's a step in the right direction. Okay, so that's a thing I think we need to move towards. It doesn't make any sense to me. The rest of the world does solidarity payments, and here's the United States being like, nah, don't worry about it. The parents will pay for it. It's like, no, they won't. There's going to be some kids left out there that don't get into that system because they simply can't afford to, or their parents choose not to. That's a massive problem. So what are the alternatives? That's what I want to hear from you all in the comments. If we can't fix solidarity payments, what other options do you have for pay to play? I'm not seeing many. You could do, I guess, like, every club has got a really big sponsor that pays for all the stuff, but like, is that really realistic? Will, like, my club in East Tennessee get some massive sponsor to give them lots and lots of money? Probably not. Where's the return on investment? And this also leads into why, clubs poach players from other clubs in their area, because they want to be known as the best. And to be known as the best, you have to win. And to win, you have to have the best players. But now that you're the best, more people want to come, so you can charge them more. And it's a for-profit mechanism. That's a problem. So without solidarity payments, what other options do we have in American soccer to fix pay to play? Leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Again, I'm sure I've just scratched the surface on this, so I'm definitely open to civilized discussion. I appreciate you being here. It's almost Thanksgiving. Have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you later. Stay tuned. We got a lot to cover. As I mentioned, I really appreciate you being here. It really does help the channel if you hit the like button. If you leave a comment, it helps inform me so I can make better videos. Make sure you watch some of these playlists over here. I have a lot to say about U.S. soccer and the things that we could do to fix our problems. I just want us to do well in a World Cup someday.